Councilmember Murray,
Present.
Councilmember Ryan,
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore,
Here.
Councilmember Woodard,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall,
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here. Oh, first thing on our agenda here is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Good evening. Just 4 quick items to brief you on this evening. The first is I'm very pleased to let you know, if you haven't heard already, that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers just awarded the city of Mountlake Terrace $5.5 million in a contract towards the Lake Ballinger Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Project. So that will make some significant strides for the aquatic vegetation for the lake. And so that is a large amount of money and a big deal for Mountlake Terrace. And so we've congratulated the staff who were involved in bringing that together. Secondly, yesterday I attended, along with I think about 35 or so city managers from all over the King and Pierce County area, a joint workshop on the issue of equity. As often as we've discussed here, the equity issue and the role of the DEI Commission, I can assure you we're not alone, because every city, both small and large, are dealing with how to define their awareness of equity journey and how to move forward to involve government as a whole and staff in particular in working with the various communities. So it's a very worthwhile workshop, hearing presentations from Tacoma and from Issaquah, and having a lot of conversation pretty much across the board from cities. And so I was very pleased to have participated on our behalf to help bring that information back. Thirdly, just an update on code enforcement. I know in recent months we've had the issue come forward with some citizen comments as well about how we do code enforcement, and is it coordinated enough, is it aggressive enough? And so in recent weeks, Assistant City Manager Clifton has actually worked with both the police department and the Community and Economic Development Department to better coordinate the role of the city's code enforcement officers in police, so that they can also be addressing land use issues, and so we won't be bifurcating the responsibility for following up on code. So the new coordination approach, which was just agreed to by staff over the last couple of days, will allow for one point of contact for incoming complaints, so that there will be no one will get the perception of a runaround. There will be updated processes and procedures for dealing with logging onto complaints and then following up on complaints, better tracking through the permitting software that we do, and then also a monthly meeting will start between our CED staff and our police staff and code enforcement. So we're taking a more coordinated approach, and I'm very confident that it's going to make a difference for responding to code enforcement issues. And then lastly, just a reminder that we have moved ahead and scheduled, I believe you're all aware, the evening of both January 30th and January 31st. We have interviews starting, I think, at 6 p.m. for the 13 candidates over the 2 evenings, and we do have the backgrounding going, taking place to make sure that they're all properly qualified before you actually meet with them. And then I'll be distributing questions for your consideration to make sure that we're prepared for those interviews that you'll be conducting. And that, Madam Mayor, would conclude my report at this time.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the review of the amendment to the 2022 biennial budget. And I think that would be...
And Madam Mayor, the next 2 items are being handled by Janella Lewis, our finance director. Unfortunately, she's having a medical issue today, so she needed to stay home, and so she's going to participate remotely. Janella, can you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Aye.
I will be presenting the amendment to the 2020 budget. Let me pull up the documents. Share my screen. Okay, can you see this?
Not
Is
very
it big
well.
enough? There, is that better? Can you hear me?
A little more, Janella, please.
Better?
This is in your packet. This is the memo. Yeah.
So this is the memo for the review of the 2022 budget amendment ordinance. And what this does is there was one fund that was in the negative for the 2022 fiscal year end, as far as we know. And this amendment concerns also the ARPA funds, because we did not spend all of it in 2022. I am going to reduce the budget to the amount that we are going to be spending for 2022. So you can see it's $2,391,679. And the net increase in expenditures for the general fund is, I'm breaking out the transfer that will go to the recreation fund into two separate pieces. It would usually be just this amount of 200,000. So 89,460 is going to be ARPA funds that are going to be used for the child care stabilization program. And you, the council, have approved this, and Jeff Betts would know the date that this was actually approved prior to when I came along. And then the transfer of 110,540 is going to be for revenue shortfall in the recreation fund. The recreation fund had revenue shortfalls in the aquatics program of 343,000. They received a SEAT grant. That's, I put that in the budget in the DCYF grant revenue, and that is for that child care stabilization program. So part of it is going to be paid for with ARPA, and part of it is paid for with the DCYF grant. So I'm recommending an additional transfer from the general fund of $200,000 and also a reduction in revenue. And I'll show you the attached documents. So here is a list of the itemized listings, and I will make this bigger. Let me know if it needs to be bigger. This is big enough. Can you see it? Good. Okay. So this is the beginning fund balance in the general fund. And also you're going to be able to see this in this fourth quarter 2022 financial report. But you can see the beginning fund balance is 8 million. Our operating revenues are 18. The ARPA local relief grant will be reduced to that 589,000. 500,000 is for the VOA. The 89,000 is what will be transferred to the recreation fund for that program. And you can see the transfer to the recreation fund, and then the rest of it is the revenue shortfall. So the total ending fund balance for the general fund after this transfer is going to go from 10 million to 8 million. And in the recreation fund, the beginning fund balance from 2021 to 2022 was actually came in negative $3,249. So I'm just truing that up and making that what the true fund balance for this recreation fund is going to be. And you can see that there was a revenue shortfall, the SEEK grant, the DCYF grant, and the transfer in that's coming in from the general fund. So the ending fund balance for the recreation fund will be $100,000 after this transfer is done. This is pretty small, so let's make it bigger. So this is the general fund. This is before any transfers are done. This is what it looks like for fourth quarter. Now I have in here estimated because all of the accrual journal entries for year end have not been posted because, as you know, we get sales tax comes in 2 months after the year end. So we need to, this is pretty much just an estimate of what it's going to come in at. Same with some of the other tax revenue. Those have a time lag. So the general fund revenues, I tried to show this is the ARPA local fiscal recovery funds of $2,981,139. And we adopted the whole thing, and then we've spent $500 so far for the VOA program. And that was for utility residents that are having trouble paying for their utilities. That's to assist them. And then I'm going to add $89,460 for the child care stabilization program in the recreation fund. This is what the general fund expenditures look like right now. The operating transfers out for the recreation fund, it's $700,000. That will be increased to $900,000. So that's my note down here that explains what that is. And so right now you can see the budgeted amount, the 2022 revised budget, that was from ordinance 2801, where we revised the budget and it's $10,615,000. Then you have the recreation fund, you have the revenues that came in. This is aquatics. You can see 49% overall is what they've received. Uh-oh, can anybody else hear an echo? And you can see that athletic fitness came in over budget, and same with youth programs. They were right on, pretty much on target. And then the SEEK grant and the DCYF grant, you can see that we did not budget for that. So I am putting the budget into that. And then the transfer from the general fund is $700,000. And you can see with the operating expenditures, they're pretty much right on target, 84% in the aquatics program, a little lower than budget, but that's understandable because of staff, and Jeff can probably speak more on that if you need him to. And so you can see that the ending fund balance as of today, or as of yesterday, is $108,320 in the negative. So we need to true that up and bring that out of the red. And that will happen with the transfer. And then the third attachment is the fourth quarter financial report after the amendment. So again, you have the revenues in there. The ARPA local, oh, let me make it bigger there. Better? So the ARPA local recovery fund, I trued it up to make it the amount that it should be. And then the child stabilization program that's in the recreation fund, that is what is going to fund that. I made this line item a one-time expense for transfer out to the recreation fund because in the past, it used to be about 700,000 or more. In 2021, we actually transferred more, and that was because of the pandemic due to revenue shortfalls. So again, this is the same thing that we're doing now. And so you can see that the fund balance is 8,024,152. Now that I've done the transfer to the recreation program. And I reduced, this is the recreation fund revenues. I reduced this to be more in line with what is happening for the aquatics. And so it's at 71%. I mean, there may be more things that come in with accrual journal entries. It's an accounting thing. And you can also see this is the transfer from the general fund of 900,000, increased it from 700,000 to 900. And then you can see that now the fund balance is more in line with what, if they are now at 91,000, if nothing is spent, you know, back posted from 2023 into 2022. And then, let's see. Here's the ordinance for this is going to be a new ordinance. The last one we did was ordinance number 2801. We adopted the budget December 7th, 2020. There was an amendment done December 21st, 2021. And I know we're a little late on this one, but you know, due to the other budget being adopted and then timing, we're doing it a little later than usual. So that is what, these are the budget revisions. The general fund revenue will go down, the expenditures will go up, the recreation fund revenues will be increased. And then you have, this is the original budget. That was ordinance 2778 for December 7, 2020. There's the general fund, then you have the recreation fund. Back then they estimated 34,000 would have been the beginning fund balance. And then we increased, I think so that was 34, increased it to 109,000. I'm guessing there was a grant or something was supposed to have been posted there or something. And so they estimated 109 to bring it back up. And there's the general fund. This is the ordinance that was adopted December 20th, 2021. And then now you have this new ordinance that will true up the general fund with an ending fund balance for 2023. Everything looks good. And then this is the original ordinance 2801. That explains why we had to do the ordinance for 2801. So staff is recommending that we go ahead with approve this draft ordinance for the end of the biennium. Any questions for me or Jeff?
Are there any questions? Was that a no? Councilmember Sonmore?
Your report, you did mention shortfalls, and, you know, these are one-time funding, and it makes it look like we have more in our budget. It kind of looks a lot different. I won't go into all those details. I've got some notes here, but what are we doing to look at shortfalls in the future, and how are different areas such as recreation looking at not to have shortfalls in the future? I know we're not at 100% operating costs, but I just don't want to, we can't be dependent on those ARPA funds for long.
Yeah. Jeff?
Good evening, council members. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So the recreation in general, as you know, from the pandemic has been hit hard, and coming back from that has been a challenge. We've slowly gotten better each year, but essentially the answer to your question would be recruitment. So I think some of these things can be, I think there's multiple reasons why we can't hire people, that we're having a really difficult time hiring lifeguards and swim instructors. I think I spoke about this at the budget a couple months ago, but not much has changed since then. It's really just a staffing issue. We have people that want to register for programs and we don't have the staff to teach those classes or the lifeguard. So really some of the programs that council's put into place, like this ARPA funded program to recruit and retain staff, is one step, and we're hoping that makes a big difference. That'll expire this June, so we have 2 more payments left on that program, but really just trying to get out there and recruit people and get them to work for us. I think that some of our other issues could be rate of pay. I think that minimum wage isn't what it used to be in some ways. I think that there's McDonald's and Dick's that pay $21 an hour to start. So it's a real challenge for us.
That is a challenge. Anyone? Okay. Well, I'm trying to on here. All right. So if there aren't any more questions or comments or anything, I guess we can, do we need to do something on this, or can we just move on to the next?
No, this would be put on your agenda for your upcoming council meeting on consent.
All right, so we on the consent agenda. I see that the meeting on Monday is almost all consent agendas. I mean Tuesday. Yes. All right, so next then is the presentation. Thank you so much, Janella. I wanted to say that. And I guess you're going to continue on with the presentation of the third quarter financial report.
Yes, so we'll get the slideshow. Can you see the slideshow?
And we
Which
also
slide
see
did you see?
your notes on.
Yes.
Click on display settings.
Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is the PowerPoint presentation for the third quarter 2022 financial report. Reviewing the city's finances on a regular basis and posting the review of the city's website highlights the city council goals of plan, finance, develop, and maintain quality services, infrastructure, and amenities. Review city finances regularly to ensure fiscal responsibility and develop and implement plans to ensure long-term funding and maintenance of public infrastructure. Tonight's review looks at several of the city funds in terms of their performance during the year and the third quarter. The general fund, the street operating fund, recreation fund, the 3 enterprise funds, and the 2 capital funds. General fund revenues are used to pay for the following programs: city council, city manager, finance, human resources and information technology, community and economic development, fire, which is contracted through South County Regional Fire, municipal court, parks and property management, and police. These are the revenues that are in the general fund. You'll see that the actuals behind those for the third quarter on the next, in the report, the detail behind it. The sales tax collections through the third quarter came in above the forecasted amount. Total sales tax collected through the third quarter was $3,147,860, which is 107% of the adopted budget. Property tax revenue is $3,806,837, or 57% of the 2022 adopted budget. And that's a low amount because we get the property taxes twice a year. Gambling tax revenues are above the budget projections, totaling $862,110, or 83% of the adopted budget. Prior to the pandemic, the gambling tax revenues for the third quarter averaged about 75% of the budget. Development service fees totaled $1,421,720, or 76% of the adopted budget. Fines and forfeitures were 25% of the adopted budget, which is pretty normal when I looked at the history. These are the general fund operating revenues through the third quarter. You can see that it dipped slightly in 2020, increased in 21, and it's pretty stable in 2022. The general fund operating expenditures through the third quarter, you can see that they dipped slightly in 2020 and are pretty stable in 21 compared to 22. At the end of the third quarter, operating revenues for 2022 totaled 74% of the budget, and operating expenditures totaled 75% of the budget. Operating revenue exceeded operating expenditures by $238,907. The ending fund balance at the end of the third quarter of 2022 totaled $8,130,534. The street operations fund covers the maintenance of the city's public right-of-ways, which is more than 60 miles of city streets, 500 city-owned street lights, 15 signalized intersections, 3,300 signs, 70 miles of sidewalks, numerous crosswalks, and other pavement markings. Vegetation maintenance for more than 20 miles of planting strips and brush control along unimproved right-of-ways. Street operating revenues and expenditures were both at 55% of the 2022 budget as of the end of the third quarter. The general fund transferred $375,000, or 75% of the 2022 operating transfers that was budgeted to the street fund during the third quarter. The recreation fund covers the revenues and expenditures of the city's recreation services, including aquatics, athletics and fitness, youth, and general recreation programs. Overall, the recreation fund has covered 68% of its costs through the third quarter. 2021 cost recovery was 68% compared to 47% in 2021. So it's getting up there, but it's getting up there slowly. Youth program revenues were 70% of adopted budget. Aquatics revenues totaled 417, or 38% of the adopted budget. The enterprise funds are funds with revenues from user rates and fees. Like a business enterprise, these funds cover their own costs without help from outside funds. By and large, under Washington law, these revenues cannot be used to subsidize programs other than those related to the utility. The city operates 3 utilities: stormwater, sewer, and water. Rates in each utility are made up of 3 components. The first portion covers maintaining and operations. The second portion pays debt on funds previously borrowed to make repairs and upgrades. and the last portion of rates goes towards replacing and upgrading the system. The Stormwater Utility Fund covers the cost of maintaining the natural and developed storm and surface water conveyance system. These actions come under regulatory requirements through the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Phase 2 permit issued by the Washington State Department of Ecology. The work includes public education and outreach, inspection of commercial and multifamily housing sites for proper operation and maintenance of stormwater treatment and control facilities, identification of illicit discharges to the stormwater system, spill cleanup response for accidental discharges, water quality monitoring for Lake Ballinger. Stormwater operating revenues totaled $3 million, or 69% of the adopted 2022 budget through the end of the third quarter. Stormwater operating expenses, including debt service, totaled 67% of the adopted 22 budget at the end of the third quarter. Operating revenues exceeded operating expenditures by $1.3 million. These funds will be used to fund future stormwater capital projects and debt service. The ending fund balance of $2.8 million includes $252,000 in operating reserves, $557,000 reserved for debt service, and $2 million designated reserve for capital projects. The next slide shows you the operating revenues and expenditures for the Stormwater Utility Fund. The Sewer Utility Fund covers the expense of providing sanitary sewer services to the community. 66 miles of mains, 30 miles of laterals, 4 lift stations, 1,400 manholes. The majority of sewer treatment services are provided by the wastewater treatment plant in Edmonds, of which Mountlake Terrace is a part owner. Smaller amounts of wastewater flows to King County Metro via Briar and Shoreline. The Sewer Utility Fund is also the funding source for capital improvements to the city's wastewater collection system and for the city's share of the cost of capital improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. Sewer service revenues are at 65% of the adopted 22 budget at the end of the third quarter. Sewer operating expense totaled 52% of the adopted 2022 budget at the end of the third quarter. Operating revenues exceed operating expenses by $5 million. These funds will be used to fund future stormwater capital projects and debt service. And here's another chart of the operating revenues and expenditures through the third quarter for 2018 to 2022. The Water Utility Fund covers the expense of providing potable water to the community. 90 miles of water mains, 3 water reservoirs, 900 hydrants, 2,700 system valves, 6,000 service connections, cross-connection and backflow prevention program, sampling of the water to ensure all standards are met, and capital improvements and replacements. Total water operating revenues are 66% of the adopted 22 budget at the end of the third quarter. Total water operating expenses are at 51% of the adopted 22 budget at the end of the third quarter. Operating revenues exceed operating expenditures by $1.8 million. These funds will be used to fund future water capital projects and debt service payments. The ending fund balance is $6,661,345. Again, a 2018 to 2022 for the revenues and expenditures for the third quarter. And this is a chart of the real estate excise tax revenues through the third quarter. 2018 to 2022. And the variance here might be due to timing. The Street Construction Fund covers projects to provide, preserve, and improve street, pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic control facilities. Portion of the city's allocation of the motor vehicle fuel tax, traffic impact fees, interest that accrues on funds in the account, state and federal grants and appropriations, loan proceeds, interagency financial participation, REIT, and TBD license fees, which is a restricted revenue. Because so much of these funds are restricted by law to be used only for street construction and not street maintenance, they are kept in a fund that is separate from the Street Operations Maintenance Fund. The capital projects supported by the funds are those identified in the Transportation Capital Facilities and Improvement Program, TCIP, and the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. Street paveways, pavement overlays, seal coats, sidewalk and sidewalk ramp construction, bicycle route signing and stripping, street reconstruction, and traffic control system upgrades. In conclusion, the city's third quarter finances highlight three things. The majority of the city programs remain on targets financially in providing cost-effective services, programs, and projects identified by Mountlake Terrace community. The City Council has adhered to a policy of ensuring these programs and projects will be able to maintain for years to come by living within our financial means. And the financial impacts of the pandemic are starting to smooth out, but we'll continue to monitor and update council as necessary. Any questions?
All right. Do we have any questions or comments? I don't see any. I don't think I have any either. So thank you. That was, I guess after you see it 15 times, you start.
And another question is do you want it shorter? The presentation,
no.
do you like it? Good information?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
great information. Thank you. It
Okay,
gets
good.
easier and easier to understand.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's just a presentation. All right. Thank you very much, Janella. Next on our agenda is a two-part thing. Do we do the Mayor Pro Tem election first, and then we go on to the liaison? Shall. Okay, so we'll do the Mayor Pro Tem. So I don't have anything in front of me for what I need to say or do in an order of, but I guess all I just do is to call for
Nominations.
nominations. So, are there any nominations for Mayor Pro Tem for the next 2 years? Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Brian Wall.
Okay, Brian Wall has been nominated. Are there any other nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Do I need to say it 3 times?
You should probably ask for a second to the motion, I would think.
Do you need a second?
No?
I don't remember needing a second in the past.
Oh. I apologize. I mentioned to several of you that I thought this was supposed to be done every 2 years because many cities do it every 2 years, so I stand corrected for the second time.
Yeah, it's, Mayor Pro Tem is every year. All right, so if there are no other nominations, should we just vote? Or is it already given? Yes. So then we'll close the nominations, and then I'll just call for the vote, which is all in favor for having Brian Wall Mayor Pro Tem? Say yes or aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Congratulations. Good. All right, so then next is the council liaison reports. Not reports. The council liaison committee positions that we're going to be choosing. We have several in here that Doug McCardo was, and I guess anyone can take any of these positions. But do we take all of them? And then, so because if we get the new council member at the end of this month, there may not be any left for that person to take. So, but we'll just go. We'll just start. We have to do it by seniority, and I don't have it on here. But I know that Councilmember Sonmore is the most senior. And then I am the second, and the third would be Rick, and then Brian, and then Steve, and then Aaron. So that's I'll choose that. Okay, so Councilmember Sonmore, you have first choice.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes. I would be requesting left one board, but with the note that I need to be appointed by the mayor and have it ratified by the city council separately. So that would be my first choice.
So do we,
I guess you could kind of maybe just pencil me in, and then you can vote on it afterwards. And then,
yeah, you would do the same thing. All right. Okay. So I am next, and I will choose AHA, since I go to those meetings anyways. You can always be an alternate or anything else. Next will be Rick Ryan.
I'd select the Arts Advisory Commission.
Okay, and then Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
I'll choose Snohomish County tomorrow.
Thank you. And then Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I will go with Lake Ballinger, McAleer Creek Watershed Forum.
And then Councilmember Murray.
I will take the alternate for AHA.
Thank you. And we're back to the top. Councilmember Sonmore.
1 second, I'm debating here real quickly. I will do Park and Rec.
Okay, and next, I'm next. I will take Seashore. And Councilmember Ryan.
Then I'd go ahead and pick the Left One Disability Board with that caveat of being appointed.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Well, now that we have a new finance director, thank you, Janella, I'd be willing to serve on the finance committee again.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodard.
I will go with the Snohomish County tomorrow alternate.
Thank you. Councilmember Murray.
I would like the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission.
And, oh, we're back on we're back to the top with Councilmember Sonmore.
I'm just debating whether I should take another one or leave it for our new person.
I was thinking that
Yeah,
too.
there's nothing else.
So we could leave our new person with the finance. And we have any others? So it's Rick, Aaron, Brian, and there's a vacancy for finance. Park and Rec. I mean, and I'm even open to that new person if they're really wanting to take Park and Rec, which I am anxious to go to a meeting, but how about if I just do finance for now and with the caveat that if they want it, they could do that? Unless anybody else is wanting that.
No, and
'Cause that's it. I think, is that all of them? Did I miss any?
are there any?
Oh,
other-
Kyoko's, aren't you already, or Mayor, aren't you already on? Sorry, I'm just looking. That's, you already get that one until 20,
Yes.
okay.
And
just
that's
wanna
not picked
verify
by
it.
us, it's
Thanks,
picked
Steve,
by
for
them.
showing me that. And
All
we
right.
have an alternate here already.
So I'm going to pass because there's nothing, I think we have everything covered here.
Oh, Mayor, Steve, are you still the alternate then for Seashore? Is that the only one we missed? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've always had alternate for Seashore, but I don't think that an alternate, when you're an alternate, at least I haven't seen alternates show up from any of the cities.
I know, I always figured the alternate, the person who is appointed to the board calls in case they can't make it. That's, unless it's changed, I don't know.
Yeah, I was the alternate for years and never had to worry about it because Kyoko was so faithful in showing up.
Actually, it's my favorite one.
So are you saying you don't need an alternate?
You
Or-
you can be an alternate,
Yes.
I can be an alternate,
wants
doesn't
it.
matter.
Oh,
But it's 7:30 in the morning on the first Friday,
Yes.
although they do hybrid now, so you at least don't have to drive there.
I got the meeting materials emailed. That was all I ever had to worry about. 'Cause
Okay, so what do we do when we get a new council member in here? Do they,
can I volunteer that they could have, if they want to take Park and Rec or Finance, they could, have those, just because I've served on a lot of the boards, and I just want to make sure the new person has that opportunity, unless somebody else is,
and they can be alternates on some of these other things too.
yeah.
like Seashore.
Maybe we will have somebody who would enjoy going to Seashore at 7:30 in the morning.
Friday
right.
morning at that.
Friday morning at 7:30, and it's pitch black. All right, so I think we picked them all, did we? So we're done with that. Nope.
Just to make it official, yeah.
Oh, we have to make it
If you
official.
would- If you're willing to appoint the two of the volunteers
Yes.
that left, and then we can ratify it with an official vote.
So do I just say that I appoint Councilmember Sonmore and Ryan to the Left One Disability Board? Do I need to have the votes from the,
I'll make a motion to ratify that.
okay, go ahead and ratify it.
I move to ratify Councilmembers Sonmore and Ryan serve on the Left One Board.
Second.
And then we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So you guys are official now.
Thank you.
Yes. All right.
Celebrate it's not me.
Okay, so next on our agenda is the consider and approve resolution requesting annexation to the South County Regional Fire Authority. And I see the Assistant Chief is sitting there.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For the record, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. For tonight's presentation, I'll briefly talk about a memorandum that's in your pocket, or packet, and I hope it's not in your pocket. And it relates to a more cryptic version of the presentation that I'll be using PowerPoint slides, just to kind of highlight what's in the memorandum. But just to go over it real briefly, in the first couple of pages, it talks about the history of where we're at and how South County Fire is interested in the city joining them and annexing into the Regional Fire Authority. And it does highlight a couple letters that were sent to the city back in January and December of 2022. And those letters do note that they are welcoming a conversation with the city, and that also they did provide a notice that they do intend to terminate the existing interlocal agreement, which expires on December 31st, 2024. And there's a caveat to that, it's not that like they'll be stopping stopping the providing of fire service, but what they're saying is if that happens, then the city will be paying parity to what other ratepayers are paying within the RFA. And I'll describe briefly, shortly, what that means to our homeowners. Also within the memorandum, I do highlight how fire and EMS service delivery in Washington is rapidly changing, and more specifically that cities are essentially getting out of the firefighting business, and they are asking more and more to annex into fire districts or regional fire authorities. And so I do provide some history on that. And then there's a section on how fire districts and RFAs are funded. And so I do highlight how traditional property tax levies and levy lid lifts apply to fire authorities. And I do talk about the rates that they're allowed to charge. And also there is a brief discussion on fire benefit charges, and those have related to them reduced maximum fire levies. And I did send the council today a video link that was provided by Leslie Hines at South County Fire, and that video describes in more detail what a fire benefit charge is, and it's really helpful because it helps you to understand. I did provide a lot of detail on that on January 3rd in my first presentation, but if you have more questions about that, Bob Eastman is here tonight from South County Fire to provide some clarification and respond to any questions you might have. I also highlight in the memorandum what some of the options are for fire service going forward. Similar to the presentation that I provided on January 3rd, which I'll highlight in my PowerPoint presentations, I do provide a map showing you what cities are within the fire authority, i.e. Linwood and Mill Creek, and which are currently under contract, that being the city of Edmonds, Mountlake, Terrace, and Briar. And then also I note the operations and the staffing and the number of stations and the governance, and also what the current rate is per 1,000 assessed evaluation within the fire authority. Also, I've attached an attachment A, and it includes a list of South County Fire's current programs. And if you review that, it's a pretty detailed list of the kind of services that they provide. Also, on page 7, I do highlight the sources of revenue to pay the current South County Fire contract, and those consist of the EMS levy, the transport fees, the fire protection tax, and the general fund. And then also, in a moment, I'll be just describing briefly what our current charges are. And then related to options available to the city, I'll be discussing those in my presentation, but I do provide a lot of detail on the options that are available to the city. And then also, I included this because it relates to a question that Councilmember Murray asked last time. It depends on when you take a vote as to when the annexation takes effect. And so I do include in that memorandum several paths that that the council can follow. And then related to establishing a Mountlake Terrace Fire District, I'll talk about that briefly as being one of the options, but it's probably one of the most costly options. And in the memorandum, I provide a lot more detail of why it is so costly to a city. And then I provide some scenarios and some timelines. There's a very specific timeline in attachment B of the letter. And then also I conclude with highlighting some specific dates as it relates to the city residents voting on potential annexation this year. So I'll go ahead and get started with my PowerPoint presentation. What I did is I used the same presentation format that I used on January 3rd of this year. I removed some slides, added some slides, provided some clarifying language. So if some of this seems familiar, that's why. But I think for the residents who might be tuning in for the first time tonight, I think the information should be very helpful for them. And I also might recommend that they click on the link on the city's webpage, City Council webpage under Agenda and Minutes, and they can click on a link to the memorandum that I prepared for the City Council. So as I mentioned, the city currently receives fire and EMS services from South County Fire under a 20-year interlocal agreement. We are at a crossroads in the delivery of fire and EMS medical services, and that's because the current agreement expires at the end of 2024. South County Fire has formally notified the city, as I recommended earlier, that they do intend to terminate the agreement, and a new agreement will need to be negotiated and would include new terms if the residents say no to annexation. South County Fire has stated that paying parity under a new contract with South County Fire taxpayers, it could increase the city's cost for fire EMS services up to 80%, perhaps twice the amount, starting in 2025. I should note that myself and Janella, our finance director, and Bob Eastman and fire staff have been meeting. We have been looking over the numbers and looking at the charges and things like that. So we hope to have that to you within the next couple weeks. Because I think that is one critical piece of information you need to have in as you make a decision about whether or not to give some of the money currently being collected to fund fire service back to the residents, and if so, how much? South County Fire has provided fire and EMS in Snohomish County services since 2001. We've contracted, the city has contracted with South County Fire since January 13th of 2005. On August 8th, the voters within the city of Linwood and Fire District 1 approved a plan creating and funding South Snohomish County Fire and Rescue Regional Fire Authority. That's otherwise known as South County Fire. On April 26th, the city of Mill Creek voters said yes to joining South County Fire, and that was a 76% yes. That was a very strong vote. On April 25th, City of Briar residents will vote on whether to annex into South County Fire RFA. And so this is a map I showed last time, and it is an area of 57 square miles and serves approximately 300,000 residents. This is a more cryptic version of a slide I presented on January 3rd, but this highlights the existing service charges for the city of Mountlake Terrace. For 2023, the city will be paying $3,496,000. That's for the service charge. So what I did not include on January 3rd was the additional information that if you add left medical benefits, office supplies, and snow 911 dispatch expenses, the total is $3,771,022. And the service charge is an increase of 17.2%, higher than the 2022 charge. And the forecasted increase in the service charge for 2024 is another 4.5%. And I should note that in the first quarter of this year, we will be paying a retroactive charge of about $216,000. The city has a few options available for delivering fire services, and as I noted within the memo that I prepared for the City Council, I do explain in more detail under each one of these items. But reestablishing the city's own fire department is the most expensive option. Operating a one station department will likely cost a lot more. You have maintenance, you have operations. Paying some of the salaries that are being paid district-wide would be a lot more difficult for a city to do by itself. There's just all kinds of reasons that are listed within the memorandum. Also, there may be an option of contracting with another city. However, Linwood is now part of South County Fire. Edmonds has a 20-year contract with South County Fire through 2030. And then as it relates to Shoreline, I had an opportunity to speak with Chief Kaw, and we spoke about the communication issue with 911, and he said that having our residents call 911 in King County if we were to merge with Shoreline just is not something that we want to do. It's just not effective. And so that eliminates that option as well. And then the other option is to negotiate a new contract for service. We can do that and should be done prior to 2024 should the voters say no to annexation. It will likely be short term, and I did mention an 80% to double the cost in my earlier comments. And then the other option is annexing into South County Fire. I did go over this information on January 3rd, but I did highlight the difference between a service contract and annexation. And so in the interest of time, I'll skip through this slide here. This slide talks about how in Washington, fire agency tax rates in urban and suburban areas typically range between $1.35 and $1,000 to $2, and most are above $1.50. It's more efficient for service providers to service an urbanized area than a more rural area for obvious reasons because of the density and the amount of revenue they're able to generate. Statewide, as I mentioned before, regionalization of fire and EMS services is occurring because it's so expensive for municipalities to provide the service. At this point, only Everett and Mukilteo operate their own fire departments in the county, but I understand that Everett is communicating with some fire districts. And then all other cities in the county have either annexed into a fire district or regional fire authority or are under contract. Regarding annexation into South County Fire, South County Fire is not willing to enter into a long-term service contract beyond 2024, and they will entertain an interim service contract if the annexation is turned down, but like I mentioned before, it will be more costly. They are very interested in having the city annex into South County Fire. We had an intergovernmental committee this evening at 5:30. And South County Fire did express such to our council members who attended that meeting. They're very excited, very interested. So I thought I would mention that. So if annexation occurs, existing fire and EMS services will be maintained by South County Fire. And they will be utilizing Fire Station number 19, which is next to City Hall. It will help stabilize the city's property tax rates and move the city's budget towards longer term stability. Right now, there's a lot of volatility in funding for the fire district because, as I mentioned in last year's budget presentation, the 17.2% increase for 2023, the 4.5% increase in 2024, the retro charge, these are unknowns, and so that volatility, it makes it rather challenging to prepare a budget because some of these figures aren't presented to the city right at the beginning of the budget process. South County Fire would continue to operate a community paramedic program and respond effectively to low acuity 911 calls in addition to conducting robust public education and prevention programs. The final terms for both annexation or the backup short-term service contract are not yet known, but I did state that we are looking at the numbers. We have been discussing extensively with South County Fire what annexation would mean as it relates to our residents paying rates to fund annexation. If annexation does occur, there would be a cost shift in how South County Fire receives revenue to pay for services, i.e. the residents would pay directly to South County Fire via the county assessor versus paying the city via the county assessor. And a key issue would be whether the city should retain ownership of Fire Station 19. Typically, cities transfer their fire assets to their new service provider, and Mountlake Terrace currently has full ownership interest in Station 19. This issue was discussed tonight at the Intergovernmental Committee, and South County Fire did reiterate that they would like to have the fire station transfer to the district or to the authority. However, we also talked about the fact that it sits on land which is on one contiguous parcel, the same parcel that City Hall and the police station sit on. So that's an issue to be addressed. Also, we have utilization of the existing fire station as it relates to information technology, and also it houses some of our vehicles for our police department. So those are some of the issues that need to be addressed as well. This is new information. I thought this was really important to highlight. The net effect on taxpayers is based on what the City Council decides to do in 2024 and beyond. A key part of annexation discussion with city voters is to confirm whether the city will mitigate some of the impact of additional fire taxes on city voters, and if so, by how much and for what purpose, and I mentioned that earlier. Because the price of fire service in Mountlake Terrace will be considerably higher in 2024 than in 2023, it will be extremely difficult for Mountlake Terrace to make annexation revenue neutral to voters, absent major reductions in other city operations, staffing, and programs. That being said, we have run preliminary numbers, and the amount that it will cost extra for a homeowner is relatively modest per month and per year. So we'll present that to you shortly. This whole scenario is very similar to Mountlake Terrace or Mill Creek. As I reviewed all the information that was presented, their videos, and looked at their presentations and how much it's costing them on a yearly, if not monthly basis, they pay more than what the city of Mountlake Terrace residents will pay should annexation occur here. But they weren't able to make it revenue neutral either, just because of how much it costs and how much revenue is generated within the city. While the City Council and Council RFA Committee discussions have taken place on this topic, including tonight's intergovernmental meeting, staff have been engaged in discussions with South County Fire to explore the provisions of fire and EMS services to the city. And we are moving on this very quickly. Bob Eastman has provided the city with a draft pre-annexation agreement. He has also provided the city with a draft regional fire authority plan that includes both the cities of Briar and Mountlake Terrace. So he is preparing that information very quickly so that we can present it to the Mountlake Terrace Council as quickly as possible. So after reviewing options available, the City Council RFA Committee believes that South County Fire is the most effective options available for ensuring continued high-quality service delivery to City Council residents and businesses after the existing City and South County Fire interlocal agreement ends. And there is a resolution also in your packet for consideration. So this RFA annexation process that you see on the screen now, just a portion of this was available on January 3rd, just because we didn't have a full understanding of all the steps necessary to go from the City Council taking action to formally engage with South County Fire, and then eventually having the voters voting on annexation, and then having the annexation take effect followed by South County Fire actually beginning to collect the revenue. So step one is the city council action to formally engage with South County Fire. That could occur tonight if the council chooses to approve the resolution requesting annexation into South County Fire. That would be followed by the city sending the resolution to South County Fire. And then the city and the RFA would meet to discuss terms and conditions of the annexation, including revisions to the RFA plan and pre-annexation agreements necessary to effectuate the annexation. And so that would occur January through February 21st. And then perform a SEPA review. South County Fire has indicated that they will be preparing SEPA for this process. That'll take place between January 20th and February 3rd. South County Fire Board needs to adopt a resolution amending the RFA plan if necessary to deal with the requested annexation and grant the request of the city to annex. This could be done as early as this month. City Council will then decide to place the annexation measure on the ballot. This needs to occur no later than, I say February 23rd, because that's the day before it's actually due to Snohomish County. And just in case, we want to get it up there a day early, so we make sure it's on the ballot if the council wants to bring this to the voters on April 25th. So the city would then transmit the request to the county elections officer on or before February 24th. And then public outreach, that's January through April 2023. City holds an election with a simple majority required for approval. That would occur on April 25th. The annexation date would be August 1st of 2023. And South County Fire would begin collecting taxes on January 1st of 2024. Now, this is only under the scenario if the council wants to place this on the April 25th ballot. So the conclusions that I have here on the screen, they're the same conclusions that I talked about on January 3rd. And so what I want to do is actually go to the memorandum and just talk about your paths, because this is very important and it relates to the resolution before you this evening. There are multiple paths, 4 primarily. The first one would be the city seeking voter approval to annex to South County Fire in 2023 so that it can begin providing service in Mountlake Terrace no later than January 1st, 2024. That would be the voters having to say yes on April 25th of this year. The other option is the city seeks voter approval to annex to South County Fire in 2023. Could be April, August, November, so that it can begin providing service in Mountlake Terrace no later than January 1st, 2025. If the council were to place this on the ballot on April 25th, they could include within the ballot measure that the annexation would take effect on January 1st of 2024, thus taxes being collected on January 1st, 2025, if that makes sense. Path C is the city seeking voter approval to annex to South County Fire in 23 or 24 so that it could begin providing service in Mountlake Terrace no later than January 1st, 2025. This year you have April, you have August, you have November options. And then next year you have February, April, August, and November. The problem is if you vote on it later than April, then that means the council would need to enter into a short-term contract because South County Fire would not be able to start collecting taxes on January 1st of 2025. And then the last path is contracting for services from South County Fire for service beyond January 1st, 2025. Should the council decide not to go to a vote beyond April of 2024, or the voters say no to annexation. So that concludes my comments. I can answer any questions the council might have. Also, Bob Eastman is here tonight to help me out if you have questions. But like I said before, there is a resolution before you this evening. The council can take action on this. And then city staff working with the council RFA committee, would begin formal discussions on the pre-annexation agreement, the regional fire authority plan, and then any financial implications related to those two items.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments? Is that a hand up? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you. On the subject of having the South County Fire take over our fire station building, I'd need to know more information on that with the pros and cons. You were saying it's on the land, though, that's the city hall's on, and that there might be some difficulty there. But yeah, I definitely need to know some pros and cons on that. And if they do take over the building, how does that work with monies? Is it gifted? Is it we get some money in return? And so anyway, I don't know where that would take place, but I'd like that kind of exercise to go on with the pros and cons.
All the questions that you just raised are the same questions we have, and we started to discuss that tonight with the Intergovernmental Committee members. And so those are discussions that have to take place, and we have to work out all the details. And obviously, we would bring all that information back to the council so that you can make the best and most informed decision you can before you make a decision on whether or not to place this on the ballot.
Are there any other questions or comments? I have one. If we go this year in April and it doesn't pass, we can go again. I'm just thinking of our city hall.
Right.
And I'm thinking, how many more times can we go, because we're going to be out of luck by the end of 2024.
Yeah.
So it's a education process for our public that we need fire service somehow, and we're not going to have it continuing the way we are doing it right now. The other thing is the fire station. It occurs to me that you could probably condo the air rights.
That is something that issue was actually raised.
Okay.
About the city retaining the land, but you would work out an easement agreement with the fire district so that they can function and operate on city-owned land.
Okay. All right.
And to your first question, Mayor, my understanding is you have the ability to put this on the ballot 3 times in a row, and then after that you have to pause for a certain amount of time, and I'm not sure what that time frame is, but is that correct, Bob?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But by that time, we're running out of time to have fire service. So we have to do a good job of educating our public on the first try, like Mill Creek obviously did.
Yeah, actually, the good thing about them going before the council makes a choice is that I looked at their question and answer webpage. Almost all the questions and all the answers are exactly how we would respond to the questions. It's so similar. Even the assessed valuation used on the house, they used, I think, 602. We're preliminarily using 619, the monthly amount, and then a lot of questions related to annexation. And that will be very helpful for us as we put an information package together.
Madam Mayor, just a comment. When you mentioned a moment ago the city's experience having gone multiple times before the voters to build City Hall. Even though I wasn't here then and had no part of that experience, I do know that general government kinds of bond issues for buildings like city halls are very difficult to come by. In contrast to fire measures, which at least in my experience are more readily accepted by voters who believe that public safety is a priority and they want to be as close as they can to the provider of fire and medical service, whereas at the same time, general government is just not a priority. So to be willing to build to be willing to vote to support a fire district and not vote City Hall seems, in my opinion, consistent with what I see happening a lot. And as I think has been said, the so-called messaging, which really is legally a matter of public information and sharing frequently asked questions and so forth, it's not a matter of promoting a ballot measure, which is not an appropriate use of government resources. But in the case of providing the proper message and information, my understanding is the fire district would be playing a very active role. And this is something they've done other times before with tremendous success. So they would be, even though it would be our voters and our putting it on the ballot in partnership with the district, they would be, I believe they'd be playing the lead on the messaging, again, in a factual and appropriate way, because certainly government resources cannot be used to tell people how to vote. So I believe that the city experience will be a lot different than whatever you went through with City Hall.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to my colleagues who have been putting in all of the work and the the members of city staff and folks over at the RFA. I know that there's been a lot of work put in and appreciate that. I guess my only question that didn't get answered was, and I think impacts timing when we get there, is just around kind of that 2024 period. And so I saw, I think, the conclusion that the group had come to, which spoke to the end of our contractual period. And I guess I just was curious if there was any additional conversation if we went to our voters sooner with potential annexation in at the beginning of 2024 versus 2025 when our contract would be up, if there was any sort of conversation around concessions or how, I guess, what that would mean for that 2024 period that we do still have a contract in place.
Well, with the contract expiring December 31st, 2024, something needs to be in place by January 1st, 2025. In order for the South County Fire Authority to start collecting taxes January 1, 2025, the voters have to say yes by at least April of 2024. The reason for that is because annexation becomes effective on August 1st of 2024. And then 4 months later, the South County Fire Authority would start collecting taxes. If you vote beyond April of 2024, that puts us in a situation where beyond December 31st, 2024, we then have to figure out how are we going to get fire service, and the only way to do that is enter into some kind of short-term contract or extension of the existing contract to provide those services. But as I mentioned before, that's where then the existing terms go away and new terms are established. And we've been told that the new terms include paying parity for our homeowners, which is going to be about 80% to 100% more than what we're paying now. So.
Thank you. And maybe I'm just to follow up on that. I guess I'm kind of thinking about the difference between if we vote to move forward with putting it before the voters in 2023, that would go into effect. You said you had looked into that, and that would go into effect January 1st of 2024. We couldn't change that date that we would begin collecting taxes, correct? Or I guess I just want to make sure I'm clear on that part. Because
one of the paths that's outlined in the memo is if the council puts this on the ballot for April 25th of this year, but includes within the ballot measure language so that it becomes effective January 1st of 2024, then South County Fire starts collecting taxes January 1st of 2025. So it's how you put the language together within the ballot measure.
Super helpful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That answers my question.
Councilmember Woodard?
Correct?
I got the yes.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think your question, the way you just said it, was answered, but I wanted to add something that indirectly addresses the idea of the contract ending sooner rather than later. The current contract that we have, and please do correct me at any point, we have 3 firefighters overnight versus if we were to sign on with this new contract, or excuse me, annexation, that would increase the number. And if I pull back and say, well, what's the difference? They pointed out today in particular, we had close to 3,000 calls. And really at the 2,000 call level, they'd be wanting to look at resources that are available. And we are not where we should be, but contractually, we are at 3 people, which is what we were at in 2005. And clearly, if those of us who were here in 2005, we are a much bigger city in 2023 than we were in 2025, whatever. I'm getting the numbers mixed up, but point remains, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it just sounded weird to say it out loud. But nonetheless, that to me was an interesting, so we should be looking at our resources. Thankfully, as far as we know, they're adequate, but could be better. And then there's other resources that would come along with that as well that I think would be very helpful for our residents to be aware of. That would be some stark differences, I think, in response and just opportunities.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to add on to that, I think the question is whether we start service or annex into the district in January 1st, 2024 versus January 1st, 2025. I think, as Councilmember Woodard points out, there are potential benefits as a service, the service is provided in starting sooner than later. But then the question is, are our residents paying more for that service in that 1 year period between January 1st, 24 and January 1st, 25, that because we're getting such a great deal under the current contract. But then another thing that occurred to me is one of the challenges, one of the concerns that we have is the volatility and we're not aware in the costs. So we have a contract, but there are some additional costs that we could incur over that 1 year period as well, that we don't even know what those costs may end up being, right? Is that correct? So that would be another potential benefit in starting in January 1st of 24, being part of being annexed into the district in January 1st, 2024, is we avoid any potential unknown costs between January 1st, 24 and 2025. Is that correct? Okay. And do we have any idea of what the dollar, going back, what is the dollar amount that the average customer would be paying to the fire district if we were to annex in 2024? That I guess then there's clear benefits to us start annexing in sooner than later, but those benefits are to the city and to a certain extent to this residents. But as a resident, am I paying more for that service that we are currently provided by contract through the end of 25? That's, I guess, the question is, are we able to answer that? And it sounds like maybe not, just because we don't know what those potential additional costs may end up being anyway.
Yes, and in response to both your questions, I think it's incumbent upon city administration and also the council RFA committee to try to put together a list of the pros and cons going earlier versus later, and then we will bring that back to you so that in time for you to make a decision. You have to make a decision by February 21st, because that's your last council meeting before you have to submit the ballot to the county. And so we have to get that to you relatively quickly. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, so. So Did someone want to make a motion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Actually, I'll defer to the. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve a resolution requesting annexation into the South Snohomish County Regional Fire Authority.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we need to do any discussions before we vote? We can just vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And that gives you direction, right? Okay. I just know that we need a fire. And it's not always just for fire, it's for all the medical issues. Majority, we do need a fire department. Okay, so next on our agenda is the review of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee 2023 funding recommendation. Who's going to give that?
I think, Madam Mayor, the Snohomish 911,
Oh,
the
did I
MOU was
miss
first.
it? Oh, okay, I did miss it. Review of the memorandum of the understanding between the Snohomish County 911, Snohomish County Public Utility District, and the city. And who is giving that one?
I am, Madam Mayor.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, well, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Recreation and Parks Director Jeff Betts. And tonight, I'm just going to review a memorandum of understanding between Snohomish County 911, Snohomish County PUD, and the city. So just a little bit of quick background on this. In 2002, the city reached an agreement with Snohomish County 911, which at that time was called Snohomish Emergency Radio Systems, or SERS. This agreement allowed SERS to construct a monopole at Jack Long Park, and that was for emergency communication and public safety purposes. So in 2005, this agreement was modified to allow the Snohomish County PUD to co-locate equipment on this monopole tower. So there was a three-way agreement between Snohomish County 911, PUD, and the city that requires PUD to pay both Snohomish 911 and the city for that leased space. So fast forward to 2021, PUD stopped making payments to the city and Snohomish County 911 for that leased space. And turns out that the original 2005 agreement had expired, and there was thought that that had been continued. A new agreement had came up from about 2010 or 2011, but it didn't look like it was fully executed. So this is quite a few years ago. So it reverted back to that original 2005, and that had expired. So PUD was reluctant to make payments with an expired agreement. So they started negotiations with Snohomish County 911. And all the while, they did continue to utilize the space on the monopole and accrue fees for that usage. So over this time period, since 2021, over the last couple of years, they've negotiated that agreement and now have come to an agreement. And that new sublease, just over the last couple months, this MOU requires PUD to make back payments for 2021 and 2022 with interest to both the city and Snohomish County 911. So the amount owed to the city is a little over $30,000. And once the city does sign this MOU, shortly thereafter, the amount will be remitted. This item is on the Tuesday council consent agenda for approval. Are there any questions?
Okay, are there any questions? I didn't know that they stopped paying. I'll go ahead, Councilmember
Yeah, just a
Samuel.
curiosity question. How do you get this so this doesn't happen again? How did it, I mean, is there like a check and balance of all the contracts that we do? So we understand that it doesn't slip, because PUD, I wouldn't think, would call it out, hey, I'm I'm behind, or maybe they should have, or 911 should have caught it too? Is there a check and balance of terms and agreements like that? Do we have a whole list of agreements that we have on a scale on when they end and when they start?
Yeah, I keep an Excel sheet for just recreation parks and property management agreements. I did not have the one they're referring to as part of my agreement list. I did not know it even existed. The one that they thought was co-signed by everybody in 2011 or so. But we've talked about this kind of at length at ELT of trying to initiate a better contract tracking method. And we do have software in place to do that. But since we've had a lot of attrition in staffing lately, with people who are trained on that, we're really looking forward to ramping that back up on our records management software the next, I would say, next few months once people are on board. But it is an issue, and it obviously was an issue at all three agencies because none of us had that signed 2011 agreement.
All right. So this then will be on our, unless anyone else has any comments, or this will be on the consent agenda for Tuesday. All right, thank you. Now,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So now we're on the review of the Tax Advisory Committee 2023 funding recommendation. The lodging tax, who's going to give that one?
That's me.
Oh, you are.
So good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Jennifer Jokes, City Clerk, for the record that I'm keeping. I'm presenting on the Lodging Tax Grant Advisory Committee recommendations. So 2 applications were received by the city for the lodging tax grant by the November 8th, 2022 deadline. Both were forwarded to the advisory committee for review also on November 8, 2022. The 2 applicants were Friends of the Arts, which submitted a request for $10,000 to help fund marketing of the 43rd Annual Arts of the Terrace Juried Art Show, September 22 through September 30 in 2023. Tour de Terrace, the Tour de Terrace organization submitted a request for $15,000 to help fund the Seafair sanctioned Tour de Terrace Summer Festival, July 28 through 30 in 2023. The advisory committee met on December 8, 2022 to discuss the applications, criteria for selection, and recommendations. And the advisory committee recommends the following lodging tax allocations: $10,000 for the Friends of the Arts for the Arts of the Terrace Juried Art Show, $15,000 for Tour de Terrace, the Tour de Terrace Summer Festival. And the agreements for the grants will explain that expenses are to be reimbursed with hotel motel tax funds following the event, and requires a final written report with receipts to be submitted after the conclusion of the program or event. And if council desires to allocate funds for any entity not listed in the recommendations or change the recommended amounts, they must submit their requests to the advisory committee for further recommendation.
Okay. Does anyone have any additions to make then before we? So it's just the arts and Tour de Terrace.
Yes, and then this too can be placed on the consent agenda for approval at the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Next is the review of Chapter 2.12 of MTMC.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, when the municipal code was revised to accommodate the agreed-upon city council salary structure as recommended by the Salary Commission. Apparently, there was an error in the drafting of the code, and so what is proposed by our city attorney is to clean up that disparity with new language, and also to have it be in the future so that it wouldn't necessarily have that the code wouldn't, the resolution reflecting the recommendations of the Salary Commission would prevail, and it wouldn't be something we have to reconcile the code with the resolution. So I believe that's a summary of where we are with why this is before you. I will confess to you, at one point I thought this was a Scrivener's error that didn't really require being brought before you, but legal counsel felt that that was not the case.
I can add one thing to that if you'd like.
Please.
So essentially, instead of having the specific numbers listed in the code, it's language that more just says follow the salary ordinance each time, so that we don't have to change the code every time there's a dollar amount or a percent increase. It just says refer to the salary ordinance that was agreed upon.
Councilmember Salmore?
So that last sentence made a lot of sense because we've never had a salary commission before. And so this was a one-time thing. So we haven't even voted on whether we wanted salary commissions in the future or not. So that doesn't affect that. This just says in the code, it'll read to follow,
It should be to follow whatever the recommendations are or whatever was voted upon in whatever manner, but the
it
specifics
doesn't
won't be
say
so.
by a independent salary commission, because the council can actually vote in their own raise. And we don't need a salary commission, but last time the council decided to have a salary commission where we've never, ever had one before. So I just wanted to make sure that this isn't establishing a salary commission, because that's not what we were trying to do.
I don't think that was the intent, but we can follow up on that.
Just want to make sure.
We've already established the salary commission.
Just that one time.
Well, that it.
We didn't ask for it to continue.
I think it expired after a certain amount of time, and then they can decide whether to.
It's up to the council to decide, because we can vote in our own raise at certain times, and so that's, because I just thought the salary commission ended after they made their proposal. Because.
Probably should take a look at it to make sure, just to clarify when we established the salary commission, what the parameters were. But it's my understanding, because you raise a good point. Oh, thank you. You raise a good point, though. As far as, if it was a one-time commission and one-time appointment and there's no other ongoing body reviewing salaries, then there's a language, I guess it needs to take another look at that language. The language basically states whatever the last decision was, or last, I guess, but I guess that's an important point. Is we need to clarify, first of all, when we established the salary commission, was it just a one-time thing, or did it sunset and then who makes a decision on having another salary commission potentially in the future or not? So I guess that's something we need to take a look at before determining if we have the right language in place, if we're considering the right language.
Well, if I may, this ordinance before you for consideration next week clearly says in Section 1 that the municipal code is hereby amended to base salaries, the salaries for elected officials shall be as established by the Mountlake Terrace Salary Commission, as set forth by chapter such and such. So it clearly, if the understanding of the council was that the salary commission is not, it was a temporary one-time thing, then I don't think this reflects that.
Well,
I don't think it was temporary.
yeah, I'm not sure if it was. I guess that's what I'm saying. I think we need to take a look and figure out if it was or wasn't.
You need to turn your thing on.
Thank you. Just because they recommended a raise to 2024, I just thought it'd be just a smaller amount of time, but because 2.12.010 or salaries, salaries are for elected, or where did it go? It said something about the salary commission, because I remember the salaries for elected established by the Mountlake Terrace Salary Commission, but it should have been like this, the 2020 Mountlake Terrace Salary Commission, because we didn't want to establish a Mountlake Terrace Salary Commission at all. It was just this one-time thing, because we just could have voted in our raise then and there, but we didn't. So we wanted to go out there and establish a committee on what we thought that they would like us to have. And so I just want to make sure it doesn't, this is an ordinance, but we're not changing 2.12.10. Sorry, I just need to double check.
Well, the ordinance does.
Read it again.
The ordinance does, if I'm reading this right, Section 1 does refer to that salaries of elected officials shall be established by the MLT Salary Commission. And so there's no, Mayor and Council, there's no urgency as far as I'm concerned with this matter. This was, as I said, this was intended to clean up an issue, and it's not doing a very good job of doing that. I would recommend that you pull this off and not worry about dealing with this next week, and let us, with the information that I now have, that the intent was not necessarily to have a salary commission in the future. If that's the council's intent, then I'd like to come back with something that doesn't say something different.
All right, Mayor.
Well, Jennifer had something first.
Thank you.
Oh,
The reason this is coming up now is because our code is out of compliance. So the code is saying that you're getting paid something now that you're not. And so according to what the Salary Commission decided when it was established and the increase each year, what you're making now, according to what that commission determined, is not what's in the code. So what the code is just simply trying to say is whatever was established, follow that. And let's not keep putting the dollar amounts in the code, so every year we have to change the code.
okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think we need to, again, we need to, before we do anything on whatever, we need to take a look at what was actually adopted. Because what our recollection is one thing, and what actually happened may be different. So we need to take a look at, figure out, did we adopt a one-time salary commission or an ongoing salary commission? And based on that, that determines what we should be putting, what we need to adopt as far as
Well,
going forward.
It looks like every 5 years, we're going to have a salary commission.
Yeah, and I don't think that, because, yeah, I'm even surprised it was for 4 years. I kept on thinking it was for 2, but it's kind of establishing one,
Because
like the mayor just
this
said.
one, yeah, this one only goes to our salaries only go up to 2024, and on 2025, it's not here. It's not written here. So it looks like we're going to have another salary commission at that time, talk about the next 5 years. That's what it's,
That's what's in the resolution.
right.
And but that doesn't mean that's what we adopted. We're assuming we can assume that that's what we adopted, but recollections from folks is different and maybe hazy. I don't recall clearly. I mean, I know, I recall that there was some folks wanted an ongoing salary commission and other folks wanted it to just be a one-time thing. What we actually adopted now, I don't recall.
Well, again, why don't we take some time to
Right.
review this? As the city clerk said, the intent was for the code not to have the salaries, but for the code to refer to the process by which salaries are set so that it doesn't lock anyone into being paid the wrong amount, which of course is something we don't want to be doing. So we do, while I still feel it's not urgent in terms of next week, it does need to be cleaned up. And so why don't you, if you would, allow us to take this back to our city attorney and pinpoint whether a commission is something you've already agreed to do with some regularity or not, and then the new language should reflect whatever process the council wants to do so that there's not a need to put the salaries in the code. So I think we can get there, but probably not by Tuesday.
Yeah, I see what's going on here. The section 10, 21210 says the council gets 800, the mayor gets 1,000, and they're actually getting different salaries right now. So that's what Jennifer's saying. The code is currently incorrect. And so getting to interim city manager Neidet's comments, section 212.010, the amended part, you could say something as simple as the salaries for elected officials shall be as set by the city council, whatever process that is, and that would probably work as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that would be an alternative. Although it would be nice to pinpoint whether the salary commission is something that is supposed to come back or not.
Yeah, because there were some of us that liked the idea of a salary commission because then the burden wasn't continuously on us to make decisions about our own pay, right? So we set up a salary commission to have somebody else provide guidance and give their insight based on, that wasn't a biased source, as in us. But whether it was a one-time thing or ongoing, I don't recall.
Established by the Mountlake.
Starting to
Go
come
ahead.
back a little bit about, because we hadn't gotten a raise in like 8 years, and we're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
It was longer than that.
10 years or, it used to be like 210 a month, and then there was a bigger bump, but we haven't talked about that in a while, so.
Every 5 years, beginning 2019, a salary commission shall be appointed and conduct a salary review.
Yeah.
Every 5 years, they're going to be appointed.
Well, considering that's, and our attorney, Hillary, wrote that language, so she's probably referring to what we adopted then, is my guess.
This is the one that's signed in 2019.
Oh, okay.
So it says
That's what
right
you're
there.
referring to, got it. That is what we adopted.
Yep.
Oh,
So the
well, there you go.
language that says every 5 years, that's in your code already. That's what you're reading?
I'm reading the Salary Commission Resolution Number 1, Mountlake Terrace Salary Commission Resolution Number 1, and we all signed it. So it tells you right there that every 5 years we pick a salary review board.
There you go.
So does that answer some of the questions?
Oh, I see what you're saying, looking at, this is what we adopted previously. The resolution that's on the link is what we adopted. Yeah. So that means it is ongoing. We did adopt an ongoing, every 5 years, we'll create a new salary commission to review and come back with new considerations.
I think there was some discussion that some people still didn't want it, but either way, I think eventually it should come back to the council to have a discussion on it and pull up some of that information. So some of the newer councils coming in understand that there are different options. I'm not saying there should be raises all the time, but just so they know that there are options. You're just not bound to this. There's, other information on it. Or they should have the history on it when they come in.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So based on the fact that this is the resolution that we adopted, I don't disagree with Councilmember Sonmore as far as educating members, making sure, you know, because this happened before you guys were even on. So you're listening to this discussion for the first time, right? So yeah, absolutely. There needs to be an education process. And we may want to reconsider how we go about it doing it. That said, what is before us and is currently on the consent calendar is appropriate to adopt as part of the consent calendar on Tuesday night, just to be able to get our code in compliance with what our practices and what the resolution we previously adopted.
Yeah, I'm looking at section 2.140, salary commission, ordinance 2744, and it does reference the salary commission and how often they meet, and so it is in the code. At least it's showing up on our webpage in the code. So yeah, the resolution before you tonight would.
I,
If the council wants to have a further discussion to choose another way of doing it, then that could follow this amendment.
So approving this next week will at least allow you to be in compliance, as the city clerk recommended 20 minutes ago. So we can do that, and then the discussion can happen afterwards. So I withdraw my comment about suggesting that you hold this off.
Agreed.
So this will be on the consent calendar on Tuesday. All right. Okay. Next is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
You should have a table over there.
No one has signed up in person for public comments. If anyone in the online audience would like to speak, please use the hand raise tool. Going once, going twice. That's it for public comment.
All right, thank you. Next is the review of the January 17th, 2023 meeting agenda. Has everyone reviewed it? It's a very simple one. Okay.
Thank you,
so-
by the way, for providing a link
Yeah, I like
the,
that too, the agenda.
for tonight's agenda. That was a great idea. Great move.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So next is council comments. Does anyone have any council comments? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure everyone is aware that Martin Luther King weekend is up this weekend, Monday off. I just would like to remind people that the slogan used to be a day on, not a day off, day of service. I don't know that they do that anymore, but just a reminder. This is a weekend to get engaged if you're not already. And I wanted to do a quick list, not just for our council, but for any residents checking in, to remind you that we have quite a bit going on here in Snohomish County. A number of times, and perhaps rightly so, people head into King County. It is his county. But just to remind you, you have a lot of wonderful opportunities going on here, and not just because I'm involved. That said, I am heavily involved in most of these, and so just really quickly, Friday there's an event and a rally and march. The Snohomish County Black Heritage Committee is the lead sponsor, although there are a number of partners. And then they also have a follow-up on Sunday. Rather than go into the details and list all that out, just know that you can look up Snohomish County Black Heritage Committee, and a lot of advertising throughout the region. Saturday, actually hold off on Saturday. Monday, an event that we have sponsored in the past, we didn't do it this year. Lift Every Voice Legacy has their event. It's a two-part event. In the morning, there's a free event for families. Our own DEIC member, Sam Doyle, will be emceeing elements of that, which we can go out and support for a number of reasons, that event. And then that evening, very wonderful laid out arts of all types of opportunities and speakers and music and dance that evening. Both of those are actually at the Edmonds Center for the Arts. The Friday and Sunday are a little bit up the hill in Everett, but nearby, all things considered. And then on Tuesday, Edmonds College will also be hosting their annual MLK tribute. I'll double back to Saturday just to say that in the spirit of it being a day of service, that's wonderful. Really, it should be a year of service. It should be an every day of service. And with that in mind, just wanted to give you all an update that currently here in our Edmonds School District, that's our focus, is a group called Access, Association for Collective Community Engagement on Safety and Security think tank. Without going too deep into it, just know that that's a number of agencies that are all focused on trying to eliminate, at minimum reduce, but hopefully eliminate youth violence. And a group that we had come to our Mountlake Terrace Library not too long ago called Alternatives to Violence Program. They'll be doing a workshop that was invite only, but I just lay that out there to let you know myself and the mayor have participated in that conversation in the past. But that is moving forward, and there'll be a lot of opportunities to get engaged very soon here with that group if that is of interest. So really the main message here is have a wonderful extended weekend. Remember why you're having that weekend, and heaven forbid if you don't have anything that you're doing, get out of your house and get engaged. There's just a lot going on in Snohomish County, but also in King County if that's your preference as well. So that is the end of my comments.
Okay, anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Woodard, for reminding us what this next weekend is all about and all the different opportunities to engage and participate and be involved and be inclusive. So thank you. Did want to remind council about next Thursday evening. How many people registered for the Snohomish County Cities dinner on next Thursday night? Just me? I hope it's not just me attending, because usually we have a great turnout at this event and would love to see the rest of you participate in this as well. And love to see you join me next Thursday at Terracotta.
It's the voting for all the.
Anything on the ballot for you?
Yes, and I'd appreciate your support and vote as well.
Go ahead.
I'm out of town.
How are you?
And Rick Ryan.
Otherwise, I'd be there.
Yeah. I was surprised that you hadn't, but that makes sense, yeah. Is that the Realtor Conference? Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm looking, I just finally found the email for is it tomorrow?
The deadline?
No, for the access.
Saturday.
Tomorrow, in 2 days. Okay, because I never responded to this. I have so many I didn't respond to. I also did not have internet for about 4 or 5 days. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. You just saved me a follow-up. I was going to talk to you afterwards. Unfortunately, two things. One, I thought the dinner was on our council night, so that's why I didn't sign up, so that's on me. And then two, I thought they said the deadline was today at noon.
They'll put you in. They'll put you in.
Okay. Yeah. Well, on the off chance they didn't and they let us in, I would put my name in as well, but I could have sworn it was.
It's a buffet dinner and they have
Oh, yeah,
lots of
no, I go,
leftovers.
yeah, well, not all the time, but I have been going. So add my name. Yeah.
Okay.
If you have any resistance, let me know. That's all.
Oh, yeah, they'll take our money.
Yeah, they'll take that.
All right, well, I have a couple of things. So I will see Councilmember Woodard on Monday night at the event, the Martin Luther King event. And I did pay, because this year, and then the Korean American Day celebration that we were all invited to is tomorrow night, the 13th. And I am going to be attending that too. And then Ben Watanabe of the Everett Herald interviewed several of us here in the city about Lake Ballinger Park, the Ballinger Park, and the article was in today's Herald. And it really is a great article about our park. So hopefully you guys all saw it. And I like the way that he actually took our quotes and didn't change it. Because it's exactly what I said that he used as a quote. And in the very end, I was talking about, everybody walks Green Lake all the time. Well, maybe now they can come and walk our park. And he put that in, so I thought that was great. So, and that's it. Did you have anything to say? Just thought I'd ask. Okay, so if there aren't any other comments for council comments, next thing on our agenda is adjournment. We are adjourned. Oh, did you have a question? Oh, no, not like an official question. Oh, you have a question for...